Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. I'm your host, Kelsey Wilhelm. Our guest this evening is Dr. Rui Martins, Vice-Rector of the University of Macau. He joins us as the university celebrates its 40th anniversary, commemorating with a series of activities highlighting the institution's development over the years. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's been a very interesting year that we've gone through, and it's good to see that anniversaries are still being celebrated. But how has this past year been for the university? I know it's been very different. And what's the importance of continuing with this celebration to commemorate these 40 years of the University of Macau?
Okay. Thank you very much again for the invitation. It has been a difficult year, or was a difficult year, the 2020. But we celebrate this year our 40th anniversary. That just started with an activity in the Open Day last Sunday. And we consider that probably this year would be still difficult to hold a grand event throughout the year. But we started with the Open Day with some opening ceremony and also opened the university to the whole Macau. And plan a series of activities throughout the year that involved mainly seminars and some conference and so on. But of course, we need to have into consideration the issues related with health, and we will try to have presidential events whenever possible. But if not possible, we may consider Zoom meetings. That is usually the normal way of communicating in the past year. But it's quite effective, and the idea is to bring together colleagues from all over the world to know better the University of Macau and also from China and the Greater Bay Area. I remember one event that we should have realized last year, that was the third annual meeting of the Association of Portuguese Universities. That was not possible to take place here. It was for the sixth time that we will have such type of annual event in Macau, but we postponed this year for June. Probably June we still cannot have our colleagues from all these Portuguese-speaking countries here, but we will organize then a Zoom meeting. Probably we will have around 200 people, but we have the capability of doing that. But we will have other events also in the Greater Bay Area and China that will take place. Try to invite some well-known professors to present these conference or seminars, and we will try our best according to the circumstances.
You know, I like the idea of not only having an open day and a one-day celebration for the anniversary, but extending it over the whole year, and it does make sense, especially under the restrictions that you've had not only with some students not being able to come or to go overseas, but also the scholars and the visiting scholars who are such a key part of that interaction, the educational interaction. I mean, given that this year has been so strange and coming into the 40th year, what would you say some of the things were that the institution was able to learn from last year in terms of, you were speaking specifically of Zoom meetings and that becoming one of the new formats. What do you think are some of the other things that the educational institution had to apply last year that will then carry forward in how it goes about its day-to-day?
Well, first, like I mentioned, the Zoom meetings, because we had to, if we consider last year, in the second semester of 1920, we had to go online for all classes.
Yeah.
And most of the students were not on the campus. They were outside campus because this happened just around the Chinese New Year. So our students from China, most of them already went back to their hometowns, and they could not come back here. The international students also were out, could not return, except a few of them for the Portuguese-speaking countries. And then the ones in Macau, they were around, but it was, since we didn't have presential classes, we offer everything through Zoom. And I must say that although it was the whole university, we were well prepared. We have a good computer infrastructure, and due to the great devotion of our colleagues, the ones on campus and also the ones that were outside campus, we were able to conclude very well this second semester. There was some worries about students that could not graduate, and this was a very important worry, but we were able to conclude everything, although there was, I think, a delay of 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Okay.
But the students were able to graduate because it was important for them also to try to, even in a difficult moment, to seek for jobs. And this was our most important thing. Then in this academic year, 2020-2021, we had the first semester where most students from China were able to come, because we have 20% more or less students from China. They were able to come here, and the ones from Macau also. So then we had a mixed type of classes with the presential classes for the ones that are on the classroom, and also with the Zoom classes remotely to the international students that could not come to the university. It could seem that it would be better like this, but since it is in a mixed mode, it has raised some difficulties, in particular for the students that are remotely on the class, because if you have everybody remotely on the class is one thing, but if you have a few in the class and some outside, it's more difficult to pay attention to both, and this raised some issues in the beginning of the first semester. But I think that the things were corrected during the time, and we hope now in the second semester that we will maintain the same type of mixed arrangement. The things will improve. Of course, we had a few complaints of some students, in particular some Malaysian students, that would like to come to Macau, but this is something that is regulated by the government and the health department, and we had to follow the rules, so we maintain this teaching for them through the internet and try to improve in the second semester.
You know, it's interesting that there's been such a forced evolution in terms of how the university has to give these classes this year, considering all of the evolution that the university has already gone through over the past 40 years. It was started off in 1981, exactly 40 years ago, as the University of East Asia, and then it only became the University of Macau in 1991. And about a year after that, you arrived in Macau, right?
Yes. Exactly.
So you've been in Macau since 1992, and then you became the Vice-Rector in 1997?
Exactly.
How has that journey been?
I became the Vice-Rector in one moment, let's say 23, almost 24 years ago, that the university was totally different from what it is now. I remember that by then there was only one Vice-Rector, and so I was a Vice-Rector helping the Rector in all matters, and now we have 5 Vice-Rectors in different areas. And by then we had around, in the 90s, around 1,500 to 2,000 students. Then beginning in 2000s, moved to 3,000 students. And at this moment we have around 11,500 students, with 7,500 or 7,800 bachelor, 2,500 master, and already 1,300 PhDs students. So it is a very big difference during this period. Of course, during the initial decade when I was here in 91 to 99, the university was basically focused on training the future graduates that will work in the public administration in Macau and in the companies after the handover. And we train a great number of students, for example, engineers, lawyers, and so on. Lawyers that are still in important places in Macau. Some of them are judges. They were even trained first in translation, then in law. Then during the 2000s to 2010, we continue to increase the number of students and focus more and more in the research. I was Vice-Rector for research during that period from 2008 until 2018, where there was a very fast growth of the research with the increase in the number of PhD students. And in the meantime, we changed for the new campus in the Hengqin Island.
Which was much, much larger than the previous one.
Exactly. It's 1 kilometer square, is 20 times larger than before. And in the meantime, I also moved now for Vice-Rector Global Affairs, because also the aim of the university and in this this year is the enlarge the internationalization in terms of students. I mentioned those students number, but in terms of international students, we have around 250 international students, 70 of them from the Portuguese-speaking countries, and our idea is to enlarge this number in the coming 2-3 years, if possible, to 500 students. Although the pandemic has delayed a bit this development, because we had from in 2019, the first year I was Vice-Rector Global Affairs, we increased around 40% in the master students, international. And this year, the things stabilized a bit. But we hope that by the end of this year, next year, things can move on and we can arrive to that number, 500, which will be a good number. Also, in general, during these 40 years, I can say that the university has been quite focused in the development for the Macau society. We have graduated more than 40,000 people at all levels, bachelor, master, PhD. In particular, in PhD, that has been a very big development. We graduated already more than 1,000 PhD students, and they have at this moment around 1,300, and there are plans from our rector to increase our numbers of students to 15,000, and also with a number enlarged in terms of the postgraduate students, in particular PhD, that may double in the coming years.
Okay. Well, and we see that the university definitely has the capacity to handle those students. I think it could take something up to like 20,000.
Yes.
But you had made a statement before when you were doing an interview with TDM Radio, and I found it quite interesting because I saw that personally within a lot of the people in my age demographic in Macau. You said that if they had got a bachelor's degree from Macau, that they would most likely be able to go and find a job within Macau. Obviously, that was before the situation of the pandemic and the increasing unemployment rate like we have now. But do you think that in any way, the possibility for employment, do you think that is limiting people from Macau, students from Macau specifically, from going on to pursue a master's or a PhD?
Yes, well, when I made that affirmation, I think it was in 2019.
Just last year.
Yeah, but it was before the pandemics. And before the pandemics, and when Macau was developing very fast, as you know, what I mentioned was true. Anybody that got a degree in the University of Macau got a job immediately, okay? Of course, now with the pandemic, the things are different, but also we have to see that and this is our goal with this 40th anniversary, is to be more focused and integrated in the Greater Bay Area. And if we consider that large space in the Guangdong province, I think that our graduates have the capability of finding jobs in that very large region. Considering the situation around 20 or 30 years ago, I remember, and I'm in charge of a state key lab in electronics, that 20 years ago there was nothing here, and when we start up the work for research, for example, I was able to recruit many master and PhD students from Macau because the economy was also not so developed. And with that, I was able to build a team based in Macau people that study in the Macau high schools and got their degrees and up to the PhD and are now very well-known scholars worldwide with Macau students. Now, or 10 years ago, the things in the economy start to develop faster, so the number of students in Macau going to master were not so high because they could find jobs easily in the industry around. Then we start to recruit more students for a postgraduate graduate area for master and PhD from China, basically, although a few international also. And we are in the process of increasing those numbers of graduate students, but we consider that our students can be trained in very different areas that give them the skills to work in the Greater Bay Area, and this will be our focus at this moment.
Well, and there are 8 faculties in the university going from arts and humanities to law, science and technology, social sciences, the Institute of Chinese Medical Sciences as well. And also you'd mentioned the laboratory. So you founded the original technology laboratory. The official name is the Analog and Mixed Signal VLSI, Very Large Scale Integration Laboratory, which is one of the state key laboratories which has been recognized by the central government. Yeah. What do you think is the importance of having those? Now there are 3 state key laboratories, right? Exactly. So one is the Internet of Things for Smart City, Quality Research in Chinese Medicine, and then the state laboratory, well, the key laboratory you founded, which became a state laboratory. Yeah. How is that helping not only to develop the talents of Macau for the Greater Bay Area, but also helping to bring students to the University of Macau?
I think that those labs, the state key labs, that the 2 that were created originally in 2011, and the third one for the Internet of Things that was created recently, they bring, because we now have already the results of more than 10 years of operation with very high level recognized results in China and worldwide. So those results brought fame to the University of Macau and attract more students and more colleagues, scholars to work in the University of Macau. Besides these state key labs, we have other labs recently founded in collaboration with the Chinese Academy of Sciences in different areas like brain science, the precision medicine. Recently we have a Center for Precision Medicine approved by the Minister of Education of China. We also have the area of materials, where we have joint laboratories at Chinese Academy of Science. We have a Center for Ocean Research. So we have increased the number of areas, which is bringing more attraction for the students, graduate students that we pretend to have here in the future. And of course, as I mentioned, we trained, for example, 1,000 PhD students. Those PhD students, at the bachelor level, we have 80% students from Macau, 20% from China. At master is 50-50. Okay. And at PhD, 20% from Macau, 80% from China. Okay. So most of our PhD graduates, they have returned to China now, and they are working in university in China, companies in China, and those are the ones that I consider will fill this Greater Bay Area. But this will be open not only to students from China, but also from graduates from Macau.
I mean, as Macau's public university, there's always the talk about developing Macau talents, trying to bring back Macau talents from overseas. Do you think that these talents who are studying at the university, who are maybe even progressing beyond the bachelor's level, getting their master's, do you think that there is the attraction for them to stay in Macau after that?
Well, as I mentioned, for example, the case of my laboratory is a good example. Okay, we have top scholars that are from Macau, and they are staying in Macau. They are in charge of the lab in Macau, but also we have a branch in Ching, and we are now collaborating with the Chinese companies in this area of electronics, and so they will develop their career here. So I think that there are many opportunities for the local people to study at university and be useful for the local society and also for the Greater Bay Area. Yes.
Yeah. There is a very important aspect of how the university is not necessarily selling itself, but attracting attention to itself for the quality work that it is doing. And that's through some of the patents which have been put out. And I wanted to ask you specifically, what is the importance of putting out some of these patents, and how difficult is it to actually go through that procedure? Because you've been registering patents with the United States, China, Taiwan. How long is this process, and what are some of the main areas that patents have been able to be registered in so far?
Well, we have started this process more or less 10 years ago when we started up the state key laboratories, and most of the initial patents were from my laboratory in electronics. And we started by the registration in the United States.
Okay.
And this usually took a long time to register those patents.
Something like what, 1 year, 2 years?
Can go up to 2 years.
Okay.
But the first ones were more difficult, but then we also trained people in order to deal with, because we have to deal with American lawyer firms and so on. And in Macau, there are some lawyer firms that gave us support in the beginning. But so far we have more than or close to 100 patents in the different areas, with more focus in electronics, Chinese medicine, but also materials, for example. But those patents are important because, for example, we had a startup or a spin-off from our state key lab, which was the first of the university, called DigiFluidic. In one area that mixes electronic and biology. And for that startup that was incubated during 2 years in one company owned by the university, that is the UMTech, we had to license to that spin-off around 7 of those patents in order that now that they can compete in the market. That company, DigiFluidic, they were very successful to develop an equipment for the detection of the COVID-19. They were under certification last year in China and are now in mass production already of that equipment that is being installed in the supermarkets, airports for the preliminary testing of the COVID-19. So this, if we didn't start by registering these patents 10 years ago, probably this would not be possible. So it is a path that we are going to continue.
Okay, okay. Where is that company based now? Is it
the company is based in Innovalley,
so
which is just across the border in Ching, and is now in one building in this Innovalley that is a kind of technology park where the several companies are appearing now, and is where also we have our Zhuhai Research Institute.
Okay. One interesting thing that I noticed about the company, you mentioned it before, was the University of Macau does have something like a 4% stake in the company.
Yes.
Why is that important?
Well, because this company was originated by from the university, incubated in the university, and like I mentioned also, we licensed 7 of those patents to the company. And our idea is that this is the original company, but we would like to have a group of startups in the future that originated in the University of Macau. But our idea is not to control those companies, and that we would like that those companies can survive by themselves in the market. And in that particular company, the CEO and the CTO are both PhD graduates from our lab, and they own 96% of the shares, and they define the strategy of the company. The 4% of the shares is basically symbolic to say that this is a university company, but they are in the market now. They already collected some venture capital, and they must survive by themselves. And our idea is to have, let's say, in a couple of years, 50 of these companies, and we hope they are successful. We also have a new institute that is the Institute for Collaborative Innovation, where several projects from students are starting up, and they are getting some support from the University of Macau Development Foundation in order that they can be successful in the future as companies, and where the university also will maintain a small share.
That's good to hear, because so often, even within the policy address or some of the political discourses that we hear, there's the talk of Macau being an innovator, or starting with innovation and then leaping into its role within the Greater Bay Area, but we don't see too many concrete examples, and it seems like this is actually where they're pushing forward.
Yes.
But one key area of that seems to be, and they've talked about this a lot, is the link between Guangdong and Macau, specifically via Hengqin. So InnoValley is based in Hengqin. I know that there's also the University of Macau has the Zhuhai Research Institute. What do you think is the current role of Hengqin and Zhuhai in terms of synergy with the University of Macau, and how is that going to change?
Well, one important thing for our structure there is that we can, since we are based in China, not in Macau, although there are possibilities of applying for funds for National Science Foundation and other financing research agencies in China through Macau, through the Science Technology Development Foundation, the FTCT. Being based in China allows us to apply like we are in China, and following all the rules that Chinese universities have, and having all those advantages that they have. And it's not only University of Macau, universities of Hong Kong are also opening different poles in the Greater Bay Area, around Shenzhen, for example, in the east side of the Pearl River Delta. So it makes also sense for us to be to have a base there for intervening not only in these applications for national foundations, but also, for example, in terms of electronics. Most of the top electronics companies are in China, in Shenzhen area, Zhuhai
Right
area.
nearby, yeah.
Yeah, and then we, in our lab, for example, we have several contracts going on where we collaborate with these companies, and the interface in Zhuhai Institute or in Hengqin is easier.
Okay. Now, the university as a whole covers so many different areas. There are so many different focuses of study, and there are so many different research areas that are involved. Obviously, there is, I wouldn't say increasingly, there has always been such a large link to the mainland and to what is going on there, and also seeking funding and different types of funding. But there's within some of the professors that we've interviewed from University of Macau here on the show, they do study some of the more polemic topics, things like U.S.-Taiwan relations, U.S.-China relations, what was happening with the protests in Hong Kong. And we've seen that there are questions, at least, that arise about academic liberty. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the importance of academic liberty as it relates to the prestige of a university?
Well, we usually call it, in the academic term, academic freedom. That is usually the term that is used. What I can say, academic freedom is related to the capability of an academic as to develop his own research area, okay? And what I usually say is that I have been in charge of research, specifically as Vice-Rector research, from 2008 to 2018. I was Vice-Rector research. But let's say I started up here the research 20 years ago, okay? So even our lab is important in the area of research, so I'm devoted to this area. And during this period in the university, also I was in charge of manage the funds to support research. And we supported research in all the areas quite openly, in an open way, like having a call for proposals in the different areas, not only science technology, also social science. Actually, we were the point in Macau that invested more in support of projects in the social science, where usually are the sensitive topics that you mentioned. And there were never any limitations for what the professors could research at university. And we have investigated in the research projects financed by the university, sensitive issues related to Macau, with China, with Taiwan, Hong Kong, relationships between the different areas. So there was no limitation to the academic freedom. Several professors you interviewed here, they may have made some comments, but these may be some interactions inside the university among colleagues, but I never saw from the management point of view this imposition of less freedom for the professors to research. Actually, some of the professors that did some comments I know well, for example, Professor Hao Zidong is no longer a professor in the university, but we supported a lot his research. He has several books supported by our university, even in sensitive topics. And if he didn't investigate other topics, it was up to him. Let's say the university didn't impose anything. Of course, there were some problems in the past with some one or two professors in the university where their contracts came to an end. But the contracts came to an end naturally. They were not abruptly terminated. As I mentioned in an interview recently in the Portuguese newspaper Ponto Final, the classrooms are not places to do politics. Okay?
Unless they're a point of study of the material.
Yes, exactly, material. Of course, if you are talking about electronics, other areas more technological, like I used to say, the transistor is not political. You have to teach the transistor as it is, technically. But other areas may imply some discussions, but I think that those political discussions should not happen in the classroom. But nothing prevents the professors and the students to discuss these issues outside the classrooms. So I think that in terms of academic freedom, what happens in the University of Macau is quite similar to know the situation in Portugal and the United States and even Europe, some Italy, the universities where I know better.
Unfortunately, our time is drawing to a close. It went by much quicker than we would like it to. There's so much more to talk about. I wanted to ask, you've been with the university for so long. You've seen so many changes, not only within the fabric of Macau, but also within the university itself. What more do you want to see happen within the university, within the student progression, within the other possibilities of subject matter which may be taught there? What would you like to see in the future?
Well, like I was saying, we will be focused more and more from now on in the Greater Bay Area. And only this focus would be a very big challenge for the University of Macau now. Because although we are the most important university here and with prestige worldwide, because since several years ago we are well ranked in the Times of Higher Education, which brings us prestige internationally. But we were able to train the elites for Macau. That are now in Macau government, many of our...
Secretary Andre
Yes,
Chung,
yes. I think that at the government of Macau, in terms of secretaries, probably we have majority of secretaries are our alumni, and we even have your case that is also our alumni. So we are spread around the Macau society. And we were able to fulfill this duty quite well during these 40 years. But the coming 20 years or 10 years up to the Golden Jubilee of the university, this development in the Greater Bay Area, and the integration of the university here, I think it will be our main focus, and my only hope is that the University of Macau becomes a top university, which is already in that position, but enlarge the capability of being the top world university in the west side of the Pearl River Delta.
Well, that's definitely some very large shoes to fill, but it seems like the university is down a very strong path for it.
Okay.
Thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And congratulations to the University of Macau for its 40th anniversary.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's all we have for this week, but please join us again next week for more TDM Talk Show. Good night.